Since my video about how American conservatives prioritize Christianity over capitalism, I've noticed that the conservatives over at the Daily Wire, like Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael J. Knowles, and Andrew Klavan, have dialed up the religious talk. Shapiro, Knowles, and Klavan notably preach about how America was founded on Judeo-Christian values. In his talk at Ithaca, Knowles insists that in order to preserve American freedom, Americans need to take religion more seriously. His overall thesis being that American freedom cannot survive without a religious population, without Christianity.
We must not content ourselves with merely making our beds and cleaning our rooms. We must not merely intellectualize or think or say, well, I don't believe myself, but, I think that religious doctrine is good for society, and so I'll just pretend because, it might be good for my psychological state or for my culture. That's not good enough. We must not even merely believe. We must not content ourselves with merely the metaphysical and the metaphorical. So why were so many of our founding fathers insistent on this point of religion? It's because freedom is dangerous. Society requires order. Either the people can order themselves or a powerful government will order you for you. Just watch out. Liberty is a risky thing, and it cannot be entrusted to just anybody. Politics sits downstream of culture, and culture sits downstream of the gods that culture worships. We must worship, truly worship, on our knees with our whole selves and with that old-time religion, the God who has blessed our country and who made America great in the first place and who can make America great again.
Now, Knowles makes this speech in response to the nonsense that is social justice and left-wing politics. In doing so, Knowles makes a package deal out of atheism, secularism, postmodernism, determinism, and all of the nonsense on the left, implying that a lack of religion leads to chaos, anarchy, and madness. And to Knowles' credit, his criticism of all this nonsense is totally fair. However, Knowles casually ignores one key secular philosophy that does not lead to total madness. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Knowles' solution to the lack of morality and continuity within the culture? You guessed it. Religion, particularly Christianity, insisting that America was founded on Christian values and that religion is essential for a free society.
Our country is built for a moral and religious people, and immoral and irreligious people cannot be trusted with American liberty.
Now that's fucked up.
Of course, his argument falls apart after looking at Asian countries that were given freedom after World War II, where Christianity is almost non-existent. Japan, South Korea, and Hong Kong's governments were all established similar to America's and England's system of law, where the protection of individual freedom and private property is the essence of justice. All three of these countries have since flourished, unleashing unprecedented amounts of wealth and prosperity, all thanks to freedom and capitalism, and no thanks to Christianity. First off, let's understand a couple reasons why someone would make this argument. That America was founded on Christian values and that Christianity is essential for a free society. Understand that the implication is that Christian values are good. Otherwise, why try to shoehorn and integrate them in with America's founding? The argument essentially is that America is great because it was founded on Christian values. Hence why everyone needs to pick up the Bible, go back to church regularly, and take faith more seriously.
Yeah, that.
This begs a good question. If Christian values are so amazing, amazing, then why not advocate for a full-on Christian-based theocracy? And the logical answer to that question is because we know what a theocracy looks like, and it looks like fucking hell. The Founding Fathers explicitly sought not to create a Christian-based government, noting that theocracies always lead to tyranny and war. As a matter of fact, the Revolutionary War was not about religion or religious persecution. It was about individual rights. Of course, Knowles talks a lot about pre-revolution American history, at points noting the diversity of religion throughout America at the time of its founding. Knowles also talks about the Christian pilgrims arriving in North America long before the Revolution, but he casually leaves out the fact that pilgrims came to America because they wanted to separate from the Church of England and escape potential religious tyranny from other Christians. Throughout the 17th century, England was constantly fighting civil wars largely due to religious tyranny, not to mention the theocracy in Spain and other oppressive theocracies throughout Europe. Gee, why would the Pilgrims want to flee the Church of England and their Christian values? Why wouldn't the Pilgrims flee to Spain or another theocracy based on Christian values? Even on a spiritual level, founders like Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine noted that religion often enslaved the mind. America was not founded on Christian values. America was founded to spite governments based on Christian values. Now, let me be clear. I'm not accusing Michael J. Knowles or the conservatives at Daily Wire of wanting or advocating for a theocracy. Although based on their rhetoric, I doubt that they would be so opposed. What's important to note is that a theocratic dictatorship is the logical conclusion of their premise. It's kind of like the long con game that American progressives started in the late 19th and early 20th century when they claimed,
"We don't want socialism, we just want a few common sense regulations and a small social safety net so nobody gets left behind."
And fast forward to today, after 100 years of more welfare programs and regulations, now American progressives have pivoted to,
"What's wrong with socialism? Social Security and Medicare are socialism. Government schools and roads are socialism. See, socialism isn't so bad. Let's have full-on socialism."
Yeah, that.
Today, religious conservatives like Michael J. Knowles will make the argument that America is a Christian nation founded on Christian values. If people are to accept this premise now, then in 100 years, after taking a few steps toward a more religious government, perhaps outlawing abortion and gay marriage, a few censorship laws, and prayers in public schools along the way, the conversation will eventually pivot to,
"Well, you agree that Christian values are good. Why not have a theocracy?"
at best, conservatives want freedom from government, but still want to tell you how to live through churches and religious leaders. What else is important to note is that these conservatives are using America as a means of selling Christianity. A point Knowles makes throughout his talk is that politics is downstream from culture, which is downstream from religion. And he's not entirely wrong, although it's ultimately downstream from philosophy and ideas. And religion is merely a set of ideas. Now, this tactic says a lot about Christianity because Knowles does not tell people that they should go back to church and read the Bible because Christianity is good for you and will make your life better, but rather that it's essential to preserve American freedom and American greatness. Which begs a good question. If Christianity is so amazing, then why not sell it on the merits of its ideas and values? There's nothing in the Ten Commandments about preserving liberty within a nation. Jesus never said anything about establishing a constitutional republic based on individual rights. If Christianity is so amazing, then why not just sell it based on its ideas and ethics? Imagine someone coming to your front door and saying,
"Hey neighbor, You should come join my 2,000-year-old cult. The fate of the country is at stake.
Okay, well, what do I have to do?
You have to come sit in a room with a bunch of your neighbors and listen to a guy talk about how our loving God killed everything on earth with a big flood. Then we eat crackers and drink wine afterward.
Nah, that sounds boring. I'm gonna sleep in and get drunk while watching football. In other words, if Christianity were so amazing, then maybe Knowles would not have to resort to scare tactics like American freedom might go away unless you go back to church. But while we're here, why don't we run through Christian values and compare them with America's founding values? I know this comparison has been made before. The YouTube channel Counter Arguments has a decent video on it, but I want to go through it myself. According to the King James Bible, the 10 Commandments say that there is one God and to worship nobody else, and to not take the Lord's name in vain. God happily admits that he's a jealous God. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution says, worship whomever you wish, or nobody at all. Even constitutional scholar Chris Ann Hall, whom I like but is pretty religious, insists that religious liberty is a Judeo-Christian view. But Chris Ann Hall is simply wrong here. The Bible does not say worship whomever you want. The Bible says worship the God in the Bible and nobody else. When discussing the history of Jesus and Christianity, Leonard Peikoff notes that one of the major reasons Christianity succeeded in competition with other Roman cults was because of its exclusivity pact. Many Romans were pagan and casually switched cults on a whim. But Christianity said, no, the Christian God is the only God you may worship. If you join the cult of Jesus, you can't be affiliated with another cult. In the Virginia Institute of Religious Freedom, Thomas Jefferson states, quote, be it enacted by General Assembly that no man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burdened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. Yeah, worship and speak of religion however you please. Very consistent with the 10 Commandments. Yeah, this doesn't sound like it contradicts Moses and Jesus at all. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, turn your cheek to your enemies and let God judge wrongdoers. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution says, you might want to keep and bear arms in case your enemies try to threaten your life. Owning a gun, yeah, real Christian. Is that why Jesus let a bunch of savages assault and murder him? Would Jesus have blown them all away had he just owned an AR-15? Keeping and bearing arms, yeah, sounds like something Jesus would totally do. In fact, if we're supposed to let God judge bad people, then why have any government or system of justice in the first place? Just live your life ignoring dickheads and assholes, and if they rape, enslave, or murder you, you'll get rewarded in heaven while God punishes your enemies.
What could possibly go wrong?
In fact, Jesus told people to sell their property and give everything to the poor. Yeah, sounds like real American capitalism. Selling my property and giving away everything I work for is really gonna help me in my pursuit of happiness.
To think that religion can give you an answer to right and wrong, so it's uphold as well, the only way to have absolutes in morality is through religion. That, is a bizarre notion. And go back to the story of Isaac and Abraham. The whole point of the story, and religious figures take this as revealing the essence of morality, is that it's whatever God says it is. If he tells you to kill your son, that's good. If he tells you later, I was just kidding, then now it would be bad to kill your son. There is no absolute here. you're dependent on God's will. It's supernatural subjectivism. There's no difference between that and a kind of personal subjectivism of an Al Capone coming along and saying, what's right? It's what I say. It's what I say goes. And you just have a supernatural version of that same mentality. And to view that as giving you absolutes in ethics it's a complete reverse of the truth.
The first lessons of the Bible are essentially, accept this book on blind faith without any proof, and the desire for knowledge is sinful. In fact, all men are born as pieces of crap with original sin. And the pinnacle of good is to give away your stuff and let a bunch of savage pieces of crap assault and crucify you as a means of relieving their sins. Nah, man, this is America. I'm gonna keep all my stuff, get rich, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can get bent. The premises that Christian conservatives use to conclude that America was founded on Christian values are just laughable. Look at how Knowles tries to undermine the Treaty of Tripoli.
Nevertheless, she persisted. Nevertheless, our lightly educated friends on the left, they insist that America is not a Christian nation. They point to slogans and catchphrases, such as the separation of church and state. The favorite line that they point to when they describe the separation of church and state is John Adams, allegedly who says, "The government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." You see this in memes that go around the social media. As Mark Twain put it, it's not what we don't know that gets us in trouble, it's what we know for certain that just ain't so. That line that I've just quoted comes from the Treaty of Tripoli, which was ratified by the Senate and signed by John Adams. But our friends on the left should probably not be so fast to point to the Treaty of Tripoli as evidence of America's multicultural, anti-Christian foundation. The Treaty of Tripoli was only signed because in the earliest days of our nation, pirates from Morocco, Tunis, Algiers, and Tripoli began kidnapping American sailors in the Mediterranean and selling them into slavery, forcing the United States to the bargaining table. As you can imagine, I'd go running to the bargaining table if my countrymen were being enslaved. The Barbary powers declared that they were at war with all Christian nations. As a result, in diplomatic communications with these states, Americans would say that they had nothing against Muslims, and in this one case, that America was not a Christian nation, because the business of America is business and they got to keep that trade going. It's very hard to blame them if you are a Christian nation and you want to conduct your trade without your people being sold into slavery. You might get a little mealy-mouthed with your language. But to the extent that John Adams or other early president reached out to Muslims, it was always for the same reason, to obtain agreements for trade and to protect ships that were being attacked in the Mediterranean. So there goes that line of argument.
Oh, is that what happened? When deliberating over this treaty, did John Adams just show up to Congress all like,
"Hey guys, I know we're a Christian nation, but let's lie about it and say we're not a Christian nation so we can fool those dumb Muslims into trading with us."
And everyone in Congress just went along with it. According to Knowles' theory, the founders were such devout Christians and wanted badly to establish a country based on Christian values that they explicitly published government documents that said otherwise, just to keep trade open with Muslim countries. Wow, what conviction those founding fathers have. But hey, I have a theory. Congress and President Adams probably included Article 11 in the Treaty of Tripoli because it's largely true, you mental gymnast. Now, in all fairness, many of the founders were Christian, and even the ones that lean more toward deism had a respect for Christianity. Thomas Jefferson rewrote the New Testament, saying very kind things about Jesus up front. Jefferson had enough respect to praise some of Jesus' teachings with enough disrespect to question all of the supernatural shit, which undermines the entire religion altogether. What good is religion without all of the miracles, magic, and voodoo? It's like trying to enjoy alcohol-free beer. Thomas Paine also had kind things to say about Jesus, while being skeptical of the mysticism in Christianity. Ben Franklin admitted to saying prayers at conventions during the American Revolution. So it's not like the founding fathers were Reddit atheists. Founders John Witherspoon and Patrick Henry were pretty devout Christians. In his farewell address, George Washington speaks of the importance of religion to keep people moral. But again, Washington speaks of religion as a vague principle. He does not mention Jesus or Christianity. This is a consistent habit of the Founding Fathers, respecting various religions without endorsing a particular religion. Why didn't Washington explicitly endorse Christianity as a possible national religion or mention Jesus Christ at all in his farewell address if America was truly meant to be a Christian nation? Why did the founders use a term like creator in the Declaration of Independence rather than a term like God, Lord, or Savior, or Jesus Christ, as commonly used in the Bible? The Founding Fathers may have had respect for religion, holding that it offered free people moral guidance and a means of building communities, but they certainly did not establish America on any religious values. In fact, they deliberately sought to avoid doing so, rather establishing America on Enlightenment values, an era where thinkers were trying to get away from mysticism. The idea of democracy predates Christianity by hundreds of years. But this is really all besides the point, because conservatives may have trouble answering two essential questions. First, if Christian values are so great, then why don't you sell them based on their ideas alone, rather than using scare tactics like American freedom depends on you going to church? And secondly, if Christian values are so great, then why not advocate for a theocracy based on biblical codes and ethics, as the founders clearly sought to avoid? And the answer to those two questions is the same. Because Christian values are trash. Knowles is absolutely right to note that America is dealing with a crisis of thought and morality. However, his remedy for America's illness is poison.